Tonight, Vice President J.D. Vance arrives in Israel as the White House's Middle East peace deal hangs in the balance. The administration's efforts to salvage a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas as tensions heighten across the region. Plus, day 21 of the government shutdown taking its toll on the nation, from airport delays to federal workers struggling to make ends meet. A look at the latest negotiations as Republicans and Democrats dig in. And
we had guys taking, mini Uzis, some machine guns to games with them.
How a beloved sport and a man on a mission from God are bringing hope to a city torn apart by violence.
You know, as the saying goes, they come for soccer and we sort of go for their souls.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. High hopes from the White House today that the Gaza ceasefire will hold. Good evening from our news bureau in Washington. I'm Michelle London. Vice President J.D. Vance and other senior officials are in Israel tonight working to keep President Trump's peace plan alive. Recent clashes between Israel and Hamas have raised concerns about the deal's future. But Vance says the ceasefire is going better than expected.
What we've seen the past week gives me great optimism the ceasefire is going to hold. And if we get from where we were a week ago to a long-term, durable peace between Israel and Gaza, there are going to be hills and valleys. There are going to be moments where it looks like things aren't going particularly well. But given that, and given the history of conflict, I think that everybody should be proud of where we are today.
The visit by White House officials comes at a sensitive time. Israel and Hamas are both accusing each other of ceasefire violations, and the terror group has yet to turn over the bodies of all remaining deceased hostages. Vance says some of the hostages are buried underneath rubble and will take some time to retrieve. He also called on Hamas to disarm or face severe consequences.
If Hamas doesn't cooperate, then as the President of the United States has said, Hamas is going to be obliterated.
Hamas has not agreed to lay down its weapons and is instead attempting to reassert authority over Gaza. Meanwhile, over on Capitol Hill, we are now 21 days into the government shutdown and still no sign of movement as Democrats and Republicans remain locked in a stalemate over health care. CBN's Caitlin Burke is following the back and forth and joins us with the latest. Caitlin.
London, 3 weeks in, and with each passing day, the impact grows. Air traffic control centers across the country are now facing crippling staffing shortages. Flights bound for Austin, Texas, had to be temporarily halted after the FAA issued a ground stop. Airports from Las Vegas to Atlanta to Newark facing similar delays as air traffic controllers working without pay are beginning to call out. Another area of concern, the country's nuclear stockpile. 1,400 federal workers tasked with safeguarding it, all furloughed, leaving only 400 people to cover the important task. Today, Republican senators met with President Trump at the White House in a show of solidarity, and on Capitol Hill, Speaker Mike Johnson held his daily news briefing.
Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are terrified of their far left base in New York and around the country. So they have given in to their demands to shut down the government so that they themselves can get the left's approval and somehow salvage their political careers. That is the whole story in one sentence, okay?
Well, our position has been that we are open certainly to anything bipartisan that emerges from the Senate in good faith that reopens the government, but at the same time decisively addresses the Republican health care crisis, which includes, but is not limited to, extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits, because that needs to be done with urgency.
Healthcare remains the main sticking point for Democrats, with Obamacare subsidies set to expire at the end of the year and Democrats demanding they be extended. Republicans say they won't negotiate on healthcare until the shutdown ends. They're urging Democrats to agree to a plan to reopen the federal government and negotiate on healthcare at a later date. For now, it's unlikely neither side showing much movement towards compromise as the government shutdown rolls closer to week 4. London?
All right, Caitlin, no ending in sight there. For more, let's bring in Brad Jacob, Associate Dean and Professor at Regent University School of Law. Brad, thank you so much for joining me. This shutdown is now tied for the second longest in U.S. history, along with the one in 1996 during the Clinton administration. That one ended on day 21. But the longest on record was during President Trump's first term, which lasted 35 days. Brad, with no major negotiations happening between Republicans and Democrats at the moment, will Congress continue to have sole power on this, or can the president step in to bring it to an end?
You know, there's many areas since January where the president has jumped in and done things that should have been done by Congress. And there's a lot of debate and litigation about whether those are constitutional or not. But I don't think anyone thinks that the president can solve this problem. This is on Congress. The Constitution is very clear. It is Congress's duty to tax and to spend money. Congress used to pass a budget every year and allocate money for different purposes in the United States government. But these days, the members of Congress are so busy doing political posturing that they're playing chicken with the country, and neither side is willing to come to the table and negotiate and compromise.
Political posturing there. This shutdown is even impacting federal courts, which saw funding dry up as early as yesterday. Can you talk about how this may limit the work they're doing with certain cases and beyond in their judicial districts, Brad?
Well, I think judges are typically very dedicated, loyal people. The Supreme Court justices are going to keep doing their job, I think, whether they're getting paychecks or not. But the further down you get in the pyramid to lower judges whose paychecks aren't as big, may not have as much money to live off of, court employees, these people are going to be hurting. And there is a question of how long do you expect people to go in and do their jobs if they're not getting a paycheck? This could start grinding the wheels of justice to a halt.
Yes, certainly impacting people all over the nation. And Democrat Senator John Fetterman making news today, telling reporters he's coming out to support Republicans using the so-called nuclear option to override the Senate filibuster in order to reopen the government. Brad, can you break this down? What are the chances of a nuclear option happening?
Well, it could happen. It's a Senate procedural rule. Nothing in the Constitution requires the filibuster, which is to say that you need a supermajority in the Senate to pass any legislation. It's already been eliminated for judicial appointments, some of those things. The idea of the filibuster is that sometimes it's best not to pass legislation, and the Senate is supposed to be a thoughtful, deliberative body, and so this would force them to debate and try to bring a consensus. But here, they're not debating, they're not discussing, they're not negotiating. There may be no way out of this. I don't think that ending the filibuster is a good outcome, but it might be the only outcome that's on the table at this point if neither side is willing to address the other side's concerns.
And Brad, just switching topics quickly, President Trump was given the green light to send the Oregon National Guard into Portland after a federal appeals court overturned a lower court's order to bar the deployment yesterday. But it is unclear when troops will arrive to the city for duty. Brad, can the state or city appeal this?
Well, certainly they can appeal it, try to get it as far as the Supreme Court if they're successful. This is a mess legally. There's a Posse Comitatus Act from 1878 that says the government may not use federal military for law enforcement purposes, but there's also other statutes that kind of cut holes in that, and the president is trying to claim that we are in the equivalent of an insurrection, that this is kind of like the Civil War all over again, and he's justified in sending in the troops. It's very murky ground from a legal perspective.
Murky ground. All right, Brad Jacob with Regent University School of Law. Thank you so much for your insight, sir.
My pleasure.
All right, before we go to break, Atlanta authorities stopped an alleged plot to shoot up one of the nation's busiest airports. Police arrested the suspect inside Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. They say his truck just outside had an assault-style rifle and 27 bullets. Members of the suspect's family had notified police that he sought to inflict harm on as many people as he could. They also provided a picture and said he has mental health issues. All right, coming up as the government shutdown continues, pastors from all 50 states descend on Washington to help the world's most vulnerable. That's what. Welcome back. Pastors from all 50 states are descending on Washington, D.C. this week. They're pushing lawmakers to support humanitarian efforts across Africa. It's part of the One campaign, an effort to shine a spotlight on those in desperate need of life-saving medications. Joining us now, Scoggins Berg, faith lead for One.org. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about the One campaign and how faith drives your mission, Scoggins.
Yes, our biggest priority is to use our voices in the public square for healthier lives and economic growth opportunities in Africa. And though we're not a faith-based organization, partnering with the local church has been a part of our DNA for the last 20 years. And so this week is the culmination of that, where we, for the first time ever, have attempted to bring in pastors from all 50 states. So we're really excited.
That is truly wonderful. And earlier this year, the Trump administration dismantled USAID, the group responsible for most of the government-funded aid programs. What impact have you seen so far?
We've been hearing stories all year, and really the pastors today are hearing stories directly from the continent about the impact. And these aren't just statistics. We heard stories today of just real lives, whether it's children not receiving food at school, to women who were a part of economic growth training seminars, just not able to come because they need to stay home. So there is a tremendous amount of impact. Many of our pastors have African ministry partners, and so they have deep connections to the continent. And many of them have never thought to enter into the public square. Of the 80 pastors here, 30 of them have never done this before. And they are inspired by this idea that when 99% of everyone who comes to a world capital, to Washington, D.C., most of them lobby on behalf of themselves or their own tribe. And I think these pastors are inspired by this idea of entering into the public square on behalf of another. And I think they believe this is the way of Jesus.
The way of Jesus. Well, Scoggins, the U.S. isn't the only country cutting foreign aid. According to a recent report from Politico, 9 nations have slashed funds for humanitarian programs. In light of what we saw during the pandemic, what impact do you think those types of widespread cuts have on global health, Scoggins?
It's sad and scary to think of the scale. As faith leaders, as pastors, we care about the one, but the scale is enormous, and we are trying to figure out a way to stop the devastation. And that is why these faith leaders are here. They have 170 meetings tomorrow on Capitol Hill to share their heart, to share why they care, and to see if Congress, they understand the shutdown. They are going to come in with empathy and understanding. It is a hard time. They are deeply committed to their communities and domestic challenges, but they're saying we can do both. We can focus on what our issues are here, but we can also help our neighbor across the ocean. And so they are wanting to really see if we can really keep things on track, because we're at a place now where if we were to just stop everything, lives are just, people are going to die.
170 meetings on the Hill. That is a busy schedule. Wow. One thought was that the cuts to foreign aid would cause some countries to be self-reliant. Are we seeing that happen?
Yes, and that is what we are advocates for, is sustainability and self-reliance. In many countries, just speaking of PEPFAR alone, the pastors will be talking about the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief. There are multiple countries graduating from that program. That has always been the goal. And so we're really seeing an opportunity now where, particularly with these new miracle drugs with HIV/AIDS, an end to this. But we're right at the final lap, and we need to keep running.
Scott Ginsburg, thank you so much for this wonderful insight with one.org. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, up next, as tensions rise between the U.S. and Colombia, a city once ruled by cartels is finding redemption. How faith and football are transforming lives in Medellin. Welcome back. Colombia is pulling its ambassador from Washington, a sign of growing tension with the U.S. Once a close ally, the relationship soured after President Trump threatened to cut aid and intervene over the flow of cocaine. But amid the strain, a different story is emerging in Colombia. The city of Medellin, once the world's murder capital, is undergoing a revolution sparked by faith and soccer. Brody Carter has the story.
High in the Andes Mountains lies Medellin, once known as the world's murder capital.
The psychologists would call Medellin the culture of death, and that's how it become, just so much death, so much killing.
Given the cartel's prevailing influence, children learned to kill before they could read. But even in this environment of violence, a different kind of revolution began taking root, one fueled by soccer, faith, and hope. American missionary Mark Wittig arrived in 1985 when bullet-riddled bodies filled the streets and young boys were recruited as soldiers. Wittig, though, looked beyond the death and saw their love for soccer. That became his way in.
When I turned 10 years old, I was already cleaning the guns from my dad.
Trained to kill as a child, Alex Saldariega learned the drug trade from his father, a cartel leader.
One day, I went home after practice and my dad was waiting for me at the door with a list of people that we needed to kill that night.
For others, like Wilson Rogers, joining the cartel simply meant survival.
We were involved with these trucks and everything because we knew at that time that we needed money to survive.
When I was 11, I found out that my mom was working as a prostitute to provide for us. I left school and started selling drugs to get my mom out of that life.
We had guys taking, mini Uzi submachine guns to games with them. I went to jail for them. I went and got them out of police stations, they had been captured, and then had them in my house as well.
Even faced with this daily dose of violent reality, one thing remained more popular here than drugs, power, and money: football. Anybody will either go see a soccer game or play soccer. So it's just a non-threatening context. A simple soccer game led by Mark sparked a movement.
A couple of weeks later, I began to organize a tournament for all these guys in the neighborhood. And he said, oh, this is a gringo that's a little different.
It wasn't just soccer. It was a connection to something greater.
The first practice, I went there and I saw a coach with a Bible in his hand.
I'll meet him out there on the soccer field. They're there. And as the saying goes, they come for soccer and we sort of go for their souls.
That approach led to this, the opening ceremony for the Social and Sport Corporation of Colombia, simply called Costa Col. It's become a sign of hope and new beginnings for the country, where former killers now coach and drug dealers become disciples. For Mark, the goal has been about transforming hearts. By grounding these young men in faith, he could raise up players to become leaders, trading violence for the gospel.
This neighborhood is called Granizal. It's where Alex grew up, and like many neighborhoods throughout Medellin, it's run by a gang leader. Nothing happens here without their permission. And although they fuel crime, violence, and drugs, they've given Costa Col the green light to come in, serve the community, build soccer fields, and it's changing the country.
Manantiales, a large community for Colombia's displaced, houses thousands who escaped the war between paramilitaries and guerrillas. They live here without electricity or running water, unless it's provided by the local gang for a price. In this neighborhood, an unlikely partnership gives children something rare, a place to play. Coste Cole worked with local gang leaders to build this field under one condition, that kids can hear the gospel.
Our coaches have really earned a good reputation in the neighborhoods. You know, even the gangs like them. Even the gang leaders want their kids to train with our teams.
Today, it's a sanctuary for thousands of children, a community where they can find mentors, guidance, and hope away from the darkness that still lingers over the city.
We learn from Jesus, his knowledge and all that is perfect.
Sports help teach us the values of Jesus, help us to distract ourselves from school, and help us to see ourselves.
Consisting of 3 soccer fields, a complex, and a brownie business that pays for half of its operations, Coste Cole reaches 45,000 lives and counting. Semi-professional teams and American universities are also involved, developing talent, hosting soccer clinics, and serving the locals.
Like when I decided to give my life to Christ that night, a lot of blessings started coming to my life.
For the glory of God, a lot of them are already working and serving for the ministry.
From the makeshift fields in Manantiales to grand stadiums of the city, Coste Cole isn't just about a game. It's forging a future. Here, faith and soccer serve as powerful allies, proving that together, they can transform lives and rebuild communities.
This is a testimony of God's grace and mercy. God is actively working to redeem this world. And if there's an example of that, it's Coste Cole and Medellin.
Now that a new season's upon us, it's clear that the true victors aren't just here on the soccer fields, but it's found in the hearts of those who've fallen in love with the transforming love and grace of Jesus Christ. Reporting in Baguio, Colombia, Brody Carter, CBN News.
Still ahead, a senior dog going viral for her sweet expression. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a dog's unique facial expressions have captured her owner's heart. And now the hearts of millions of people on social media. Let's take a look. Bella, let's see. Bella, yes, a 14-year-old wiener dog in Tampa, known for her slightly slanted mouth that looks a lot like a smile. That does look like a smile. Bella's owner, Melanie, says her smile has gotten even bigger over time, and she's lost more teeth in her golden years. But her age isn't stopping her from becoming a social media sensation. Some of her videos have picked up millions of views online. Good job for Bella there.
Every time I look at her face, I'm like, you can't be real. You're a stuffed animal. I mean, basically her face is just 3 black dots, right? It's like her eyeballs and her nose and then her little smirk. It's the funniest thing.
Despite her age, Melanie says Bella still enjoys swimming and going for rides in her stroller. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation. See you tomorrow.